The Joe Rogan Experience.
But the diagnosis of addiction is really based on behaviors and can be briefly summarized as the 4 C's: control, compulsion, craving, and consequences, especially continued use despite consequences.
So, like, what if you're like I have friends that are addicted to golf, and they just can't wait to go play golf? What's the consequences?
Well,
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host, the expert Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 323. Hope you're amazing as always. I really do. The world's still absolute going crazy. Depends on what part you are. Depends on what country. Some countries are locked down. Some countries are partying in nightclubs. It's bizarre. But wherever it's going on and wherever you are, I hope you're finding strength. I hope you're really working out what's important to you. And I really hope it's created a big shift in your mindset to be able to really, apply to get what you want. And that's what life's about, man. At the end of the day, it's, I'll tell you a quick story. Quick story before we jump into today. And today's an interesting topic. We're talking about the difference between addiction and discipline and the consequences of both. So that's what we're going into. It's a little clip from Joe Rogan, and it's powerful. So we'll get into that in a little bit. For those of you who are struggling a little bit right now, and do you know what I mean? There's consequences to that. Part of that is an addictive behavior, right? Discipline, addiction, whatever you want to call it. It's a little story if you're struggling right now. This story kind of takes away all excuses. And what I mean by that is, it's like anything, right? There's always someone richer, always someone healthier, always someone worse off, always someone with more health issues. You get the idea, right? So everything's about perspective. And this story it blew my head, and it's always played in the background of my mind when I've been going through a lot of different things. It's actually a story, an interview that I saw many years ago by a lady who was in Auschwitz. So obviously that's a concentration camp in Germany back in the war. And obviously she's an old lady now. But what was wild, they had children in there. They were in there for years. Like, we're talking like maybe 10 years or something crazy. But they had children in there. The grandparents were in there. The parents were in there. The kids were in there. They were in there as a couple. And you can't even begin to imagine or put your brain into what those circumstances are like until you've been there, right? Do you know what I mean? You can't really begin to understand what it feels like to wake up in constant fear that one of yourself or your family member might suddenly disappear that day, right? There's not enough food. There's not enough water. You know what I mean? That's a whole wild circumstance. I can't even begin to imagine, and I'm sure you can't too unless you've been in it. And what was wild is the interview said to her, "You just seem so happy. You just seem smiling and joking all the time. What's the secret to this? Were you like this when you were locked up, basically, in the concentration camp?" And she was like, "Yes." And they were like, "How? How is it possible for you to even stay happy? And even not to even look back on those times right now and still be happy after looking back on those times, and it was so horrific." And she gives it, well, there was a choice in there. Now, none of us knew if we were going to get out or not. But we knew we were there, and we knew there was a tiny glimmer of light. Right? A tiny glimmer of light that we might get out. The word might get out. We might get out. There's a tiny glimmer of light. And we had a choice. We can focus on all the darkness that is around us, or we can focus on that glimmer of light. And that's exactly what the whole family did. So we made sure that we joked every day, we laughed every day, we were bonded as a family every day. We loved each other, we were grateful for each other, we were grateful for our lives. And she got out. And so did some of her family, not all, but some. And think about that, man. So it doesn't matter what you're going through right now. It doesn't matter how horrible it is. You can find the strength to get through it. You can find the strength to change. You can find the strength to get to the other side, to focus on that glimmer of light, to focus on that hope, to focus there. You can do it. And if you're kicking ass right now, but the pressure's so much, well, you've got that glimmer of light. If you're in a mess right now and you're working your way out of it, you've got that glimmer of light. And I just want you to really remember this and remember this lesson, because it doesn't matter what's going on. If that person can get through that, so can you. Now, that's a story I tell myself quite often when it's time to tell myself and when it's needed. And I hope you can do the same too. A little bit of an emotional story to start off today, crew. So, but hopefully that helps someone. And speaking of helping someone, help yourself. Help yourself. We got some badass things coming out. You should know by now. If you're a regular listener, you should know by now that we've got what? Well, we've got the first stage. It depends if you're a trader. Crypto, Forex, stock. We got something badass for you. If you're already trading and you want to take your game to a genius level, then guess what? You have launching very soon the Genius Trader Club. Yeah, that's giving you all the tactics and strategies to get complete mental control. Once you understand how to design and control your brain and your mindset, you're able to step into flow state whenever you choose. And that's powerful when you're trading day to day. Imagine that. Imagine being able to trade at your best every single day. Powerful? You got it. So that's coming out very, very soon. What else we got? We got the relaunch of the 8-Figure Thinker. Yes, the number one most powerful mental encyclopedia training system that exists for entrepreneurs. It's the most in-depth academy that you could put yourself through. And for business, it really, really is. There's so much fluff out there and noise, but this is absolutely the opposite. This is like an encyclopedia, and it becomes your resource to go back to and tune your brain up and get insights and lessons for the rest of your life. And that's coming out very, very soon again. What else we got coming out? We've got something really cool coming out. I'm in talks with it. Well, tomorrow actually again. So I'll let you know more about that. What else? Well, I take on, I've got a couple of masterminds starting as well, just so you know. But I take on one client a month. I'm pretty damn full. But if you're the right fit, I'd love to take you to that next level. I'd love to show you exactly what the best in the world have hired me for, and there is no fluff. It's pure mental tactics and strategies for you to be able to perform at your absolute best, no matter what the pressure, no matter what you're going through. If you could feel and see the world as your best day, imagine what's possible. You got it. World class. So head over to the show notes. All the links are there, or head over to andymurphy.online. Yep, new websites are getting built. Like all of these are getting built right now. And but you can access 2 awesome gifts. You can access 1. Get your mornings right with the Fire Mind Morning Audio. What does that mean? It means stop with your pen and paper, drop your brain into alpha wave and let me tune it up so you step into your most powerful day every single day. And it's free right now before I put it somewhere else. Also, go and get your copy of the Total Control Blueprint. This is version 1. It's waiting for you to grab it for free before I put it onto Amazon. But go and grab that now. It's pretty badass, and it's going to show you the difference what I do compared to, 99% of the people that are out there. So go and take a look at that. But all of that's on the show notes. all of that in andymurphy.online. Just come and hang out. Come and hang out in Andy Murphy Mindset, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just type in Andy Murphy Mindset and you will find me. So, shall I shut up and shall we jump into this? Thought you might say that. Let's do this and I'll see you at the end of the show. Okay, crew, let's get into this because it's such an interesting topic and it's something that, society actually rewards. Do you know what I mean? The addiction. But isn't it addiction or is it discipline? There's a fine line, or is there a fine line? And that's what we're going to go into today. So let's jump into the first little clip. I know you're going to love it.
But the diagnosis of addiction is really based on behaviors and can be briefly summarized as the 4 C's: control, compulsion, craving, and consequences, especially continued use despite consequences.
So, like, what if you're like I have friends that are addicted to golf, and they just can't wait to go play golf? What's the consequences?
Well, it might be that their spouse says, gee whiz, why are you playing golf all the time?
Maybe they just need a new spouse.
Well, okay. So this actually comes up a lot in clinical care. Like, to what extent is it my problem? And
Right.
to what extent do I have to change my life?
Right.
So let's just jump in there, crew. So think about that, right? The 4 C's: control, compulsion, craving, and consequences. So think about that. What she's describing there is, and Joe brought up, was a really interesting point. And it's kind of what's not talked about in the entrepreneur space. It is actually more than it's ever been. But you get douchebags out there who are high-level marketers, and that's all they are. They're not anything more than marketers. And what they teach you is to keep grinding, keep pushing, more, right? Well, if you haven't got, you're not working 12, 14, 16-hour days, you're not doing anything. And it's such a lie because they're obviously not making strategic moves. And you're not generally Elon Musk who's running all of those businesses, right? So what is it really? Well, from my side, that's an addictive pattern, right? Because, again, we're looking at the consequences, like they spoke about, the consequences of destroying everything around you, the relationship, right? Your friendships, well, they might enhance if you're playing golf with them, but your relationships, your health could suffer, your business could suffer, your mental state could suffer, right? All because what we're doing is we're having a certain type of brain response, which is allowing us or making us, or we're deciding to escape. Right? So we use that as an escape mechanism to create a dopamine hit, right? A dopamine spike. And if you are doing that in your business, then you really have to sit back and look. Are you using your business as a dopamine hit to feel good because you're not feeling good in the rest of your life? And the more you keep going down the path of work, the more you're distancing yourself from homeostasis, right? And having a balanced or balanced life, or an equally working nice life, right? Because why would you want to work all the time if the rest of your life sucks? Well, that's the reason, right? Because your rest of your life sucks, so you want to work more. But understand, is that an addiction? Is that discipline? Or is that, to me, that's an escapism that's become an addictive behavior? So when Joe talks about this, I really like it because he brings up an instant point. Do we just need to change our environment? Do we need to change who is going on the ride with us, our partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, or whatever you want to call them, or your business partner? And when you can understand that, then we have to be exceptionally careful who we allow around us from the beginning. Does that make sense? Because if you're picking up things about the person, certain behaviors, certain patterns, certain belief systems early on, probably want to listen to them. Because once you're in business with them or further down the track, do you think those habits are going to change or those behaviors? Probably not, right? Probably not. So you got to understand that if you're going on a business, it's not, and you're an entrepreneur, it's nice to have other entrepreneurs around you or your partner to be an entrepreneur, right? It kind of helps. If they're not, they have to fully understand that this is going to be a major part of your life every single day. And if they don't get that, then it's probably the wrong person, because they have to be massively supportive and understand, or at least have tried something themselves. And that way they can at least understand your perspective, because none of this is easy, right? None of it's easy. It's an emotional ride for sure.
And I always say to patients, that is a great question, and not one that I can answer for you, but maybe together we can find the answer. Because the truth is, sometimes it is a question of needing to change your life, right? And I wouldn't presume to necessarily know, especially with cases on the border. Now, there are certainly...
On the border.
I mean, on the border of
consequence.
Pathological, yeah.
Right.
I mean, there are some cases where okay, you don't need to be a psychiatrist to diagnose that this person has addiction.
It seems open to interpretation in the world of what you would call extreme winners, like the Michael Jordans of the world, the people that are just absolutely, completely obsessed with winning. That seems like you could kind of call that an addiction, but then they are the most celebrated people in all of the world.
Right. So you're tapping into something that is really important to talk about, which is that our society rewards certain types of addictions and not others. We certainly reward professional athletes who have become obsessively focused on their sport. We certainly reward workaholics of all types. And again, it's not to say that we should pathologize all types of intensity or all types of commitment to a behavior. That's not what it's about. But what I think is important is to recognize that the same mental machinery that approach and avoid behavior mediated by dopamine that is at play when we become addicted to something can be at play really in all different aspects of our lives, not just drugs and alcohol.
So, Crew, just to jump in, what she's talking about there is being physically addicted, neurologically addicted, and also chemically addicted to behaviors or patterns or people, right? So, for example, chemically addicted means that once we repeat a certain type of behavior, it releases a pattern of certain chemicals that make us feel good, right? Or make us feel a certain way. So if we keep repeating that pattern, it releases the same chemicals which make us feel a certain way. The brain, what it wants to do is it just wants to replicate patterns. It wants to find the simplest, easiest, smoothest way to create a behavior. Whether the behavior is what you want or what you don't want, it doesn't really matter. The brain or the unconscious mind software wants to complete that pattern. So when you begin to understand that, then you have to be exceptionally careful of what behaviors you implement or habits we transform, because it's creating a behavioral addiction, right? So that's a chemical addiction. It's the same with smokers, right? Think of smokers. They often quit and they still have something like a pen, or you can get these fake cigarettes, right? That you're smoking, right? Why? Because after 7 days, nicotine is actually out the system, and then it's a behavioral addiction. People like putting those things to the mouth, right? And that becomes something that you play with in your hands, and you get the idea, right? So whether it's a pen you replicate or replicate the same behavior with, or you get the idea, right? So that can be in every area of our life. We're talking about extreme things in sports, but think about where you're doing this behavior. Are you addicted to drama? Are you addicted to arguing with your partner? Are you addicted to looking at money or life a certain negative way, right? Are you addicted to holding yourself back, and you can feel yourself about to break through a pattern or a behavior or get to a new stage of income or life, but an old little thing comes up, it sabotages you, right? And you start doing the wrong behaviors or wrong thoughts, and everything goes to shit, basically. Sound familiar in some of the things? Right. So when we understand that, that's an addiction, right? We become addicted to inside and outside world behaviors about the past, the future. You get the idea.
So you're essentially looking at this very objectively. You're not making a judgment call. You're just saying the same mechanism is in place, whether it is extremely beneficial, like you are a Michael Jordan, or whether extremely detrimental, like you're a person who's addicted to crack, or you're a gambling addict who keeps blowing all of their family's money.
Yes.
It's kind of, you're on the same human neurological pathway. Is
That's exactly right. It's the same mental machinery that's, being applied. And again, there are certain types of addictive behaviors that our society rewards. But even in those cases, I think it's important for people to really closely evaluate potential hidden consequences. And I feel like that's happening. I mean, just using the example, again, of athletes, I feel like there are more and more there are athletes who are in different ways kind of questioning their lifestyle or the things that they have to do, which I think is good. I think it's always good to look at the pros and cons. Basically, there's never the light without the dark. It's really that dialectic that comes into play really in all aspects of our lives, which I think we need to talk about and think about.
We celebrate the people that are extreme winners. We celebrate the people that are absolutely, completely obsessed with performance, and they have everything dialed in, including their calories, their macronutrients, the amount of sleep they have, the amount of recovery that they seek out, how they do it. But they have a massive reward for that, right? The massive reward is the glory of being a Michael Jordan or being a Mike Tyson or being a Sugar Ray Leonard or whoever it is at the peak of their performance when they're on top of the world.
Yeah.
There's a great deal of benefit to having what many would just call extreme discipline.
Yes.
So what's wrong with that?
Well, what we hear very little about is when that road comes to an end and that escalating glory and reward dries up and what those people's lives are like after that. And my sense is that unless they've worked very hard to cultivate other aspects of their personality, when that dopamine trail dries up because they get injured or they just age, then they have to contend with, the come down, the dopamine deficit state, not to mention all of the other aspects related to loss of identity.
Let me jump in there, crew. So do you understand what that means? Do you understand what that means this is what I specialize in. One of the things I specialize in with founders and high performers who are exiting companies or they're transitioning to a different thing that isn't as intense, right? Or they're moving to a different stage of their life and they simply don't know what to do next. Because like they've said, right, CEOs, founders, high performers and sports athletes, business, what you got to understand is that they become often very dopamine addicted. So what that means is that you're constantly chasing the next high. It becomes like literally a drug addiction. And so when you are not in action or chaos or whatever it is, then you're not getting the same chemical hits. So often what happens is when people have got nothing else to do, meaning an athlete leaves or they get an exit, someone sells a company and gets millions and millions of dollars, what they'll end up doing is what? Partying, drugs, alcohol, or doing something other extreme. And hopefully that extreme is business or yoga. That's why you get a lot of athletes jumping into business. That's simple. Because they're taking that discipline, that addictive behavior, those abilities to win, that knowledge, that wisdom, and moving it into making money in another venture. But understand again, that is good and bad, right? There's consequences, good and bad. There's high highs and probably low lows. So by using that dopamine to look inside yourself and actually build yourself and unlock potential, unlock ideas, unlock concepts, unlock truth, then what you're able to do is take the awesomeness and build it into the future and unlock really where the next person wants to go. So they don't have this crash, they don't have the sabotage, they don't have all of these consequences of not getting that dopamine trail. Does that make sense? So you might be like that now, and you might be dopamine addicted, and you're running around in circles chasing your tail. Or you could be not wanting to pull the trigger because of past problems, right? So you keep going back to that old issue where things went wrong, and then your dopamine hitting in that old issue. Does that make sense? So imagine if we could clear all that. You could hit that next level of income, business, success very, very quickly. That's why I've launched masterminds, products, and everything, because I really care. You know what I mean? Let's jump back in.
Who am I if I'm not this person who's winning? And of course, that's an old trope. I mean, we know that, but we don't hear about those athletes after that. The other thing I would say that you point out in that description, which I think is also key to the process of becoming addicted, is the ways in which addiction is also about controlling and changing the way we feel in the moment, rather than tolerating the feelings or the uncertainty of what's next and just letting it wash over us. So a really key important aspect of what you call discipline, but which I think in some contexts might be addiction, is wanting to control what we're feeling, when we feel it.
So that brings up an amazing point, what you just said, control. And that's connected to me to ego, right? And ego is connected to insecurity or having something to prove, right? And those create diamonds. They really do that pressure. I mean, that's what creates a billionaire. That's what creates a world champion athlete or a Hollywood star. Somebody who has something to prove, right? But once they've proved what it is, they're left very empty. And I've seen this thousands of times. And so you lose your identity, who you are, what's happening, right? So that uneasy or I don't deserve feeling, right? Well, guess what? Well, we don't want that. And it happens when we are out of control or stepping into the unknown, right? We get that doubt, we get that fear response. Even if you're not afraid, you get a fear response in your brain. And when we get that, guess what? We have to either connect correctly with ourselves and detach from the external, or we go external and trying to control the outside, which then we try to control the inside from the outside, instead of controlling the outside from the inside. Does that make sense? And that's the big key difference of someone who's got mental mastery in what I teach. They're using the external world to affect their inner world, where it's not like that. We use the inner world to directly have effect. So we cause and effect. Cause is the inner. The outer is effect, right? So what we want to make sure is that cause and effect response is the right one, right? Does that make sense? And we're not just controlling all of the time and then we're on our own and we're freaking out, right? So we have to go and tell someone we're awesome or do a radical thing or be negative, right? And down in the dumps. And either way, we're getting that dopamine hit. And that becomes a massive, massive problem.
And I think this is also deeply embedded into modern life and modern culture.
Explain that, wanting to control what we're feeling and when we feel it.
Yeah,
and that's what separates discipline from addiction.
No, I think there's overlap there. So let me go back. So part of what drives the phenomenon of addiction is that people control what they feel when they feel it. So for example, in this moment, let's say I'm struggling, right? But I feel like, I can get through this because when this is over, I'm not saying I'm struggling, but I mean, if I were.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but because when this is over, I'm going to reward myself with X, Y, and Z.
So like if you go running and then afterwards you can have a slice of pizza.
That's right, exactly. So it's the way that we bracket our endeavors with rewards. And this is just like deeply embedded into our culture. And the control aspect is a big part of the addictive aspect, because I'm now going to control the way I feel when I feel it. which is a very different way of living if you were to eliminate rewards as a way to shape time. If you were to think, I'm not going to do anything to reward myself today, I'm just going to get through the day, it totally changes the arc of our experience in the moment.
So think about that, right? Why do you do your business, right? Why do we do things? Why are you doing what you're doing? It's for a reward, right? And that's the pleasure center in the brain that what we want is the chemicals, right? So, but the reward for your business might be money, prestige, success, recognition. It also could just be about helping people, or it could just be doing what you love. Each one has a very different reward, which the reward to me is also connected to the driver. And the driver is the emotional response inside of you that pulls you forwards, right? So if the reward is off, then the driver is off. And that means then you're going to be in the wrong response or emotion to be able to, create consistency without the highs and the lows in your performance. Does that make sense? I mean, crew, there we are at the end of episode 323, I should say, but hopefully you loved that, got something from it. It's a topic I could go on and on and on and on for hours, right? It's so fascinating about how we are triggering ourselves and the responses and the reward mechanisms and the loss of identity or identity and the chemical addiction mixed with the discipline and the fine line between both and the ability to maintain and control. And it's a beautiful topic. It's a beautiful topic. So if any of that resonated with you today, then let's do something different. Let's do something different and let's step up. Hit over to those show notes where you're going to, for a start, definitely be typing in Andy Murphy Mindset, where you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, all through that title. What else can you do? Yes, you can, get yourself 2 free gifts. Sort your mornings out, tune your unconscious programming so you can have the best day every single day with the Fire Mind Morning. Go to andymurphy.online or firemind.me and download it for free today. Gonna change everything, I promise you. No more pens and pencils in the morning. Second thing is go and get your Total Control Blueprints book. It's pretty badass. It's going to show you about brainwave state change and all the other stuff that no one else really is teaching because they don't get it. And you're going to see the difference there. So go and grab both of those things for free off andymurphy.online. You know all the other things we've got coming out. We've got the 8-Figure Thinker being relaunched. We've got the Genius Trader Club being launched. We've got another mastermind being launched. And it's pretty exciting times. So make sure that you're hanging out, connecting, grabbing a course, whatever it is, and keep kicking ass. Until the next time, you have a beautiful week. Much love, and until the next time, why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.